The coming 2 weeks in the bold and the beautiful unfold like a slow-burning storm that gathers force with every whispered secret, every sidelong glance, and every decision made in desperation rather than clarity. What begins as a series of professional disagreements and personal doubts soon deepens into something far more volatile, a convergence of ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and fear that threatens to fracture not only a powerful fashion empire, but also the fragile bonds of family that have long defined it. At the heart of this unraveling stands Hope Logan Spencer, a woman who has always walked a delicate line between idealism and pragmatism. For years, Hope has tried to reconcile her vision of integrity with the ruthless realities of the fashion world, but now that balance is slipping. Pressured by Steffy Forrester Finnegan's increasingly assertive authority and the subtle but unmistakable shifts in power at Forrester Creations, Hope finds herself cornered, emotionally, professionally, and even morally. There is a growing sense that no matter how carefully she chooses her words or actions, she is no longer being heard. The company that once embraced her vision now feels like hostile ground, where every idea is scrutinized not for its merit, but for its origin. Steffy, for her part, is not blind to the tension. If anything, she feeds on it, though perhaps not consciously. To her, leadership demands decisiveness, and decisiveness often leaves little room for compromise. She sees Hope not as a victim of circumstance, but as a rival whose influence must be contained before it undermines the structure she has worked so hard to uphold. Yet beneath Steffy's confidence lies a quiet unease, a recognition that the more she tightens her grip, the more resistance she creates. This internal contradiction fuels her frustration, making every interaction with Hope sharper, more charged, and increasingly personal. Caught in the crossfire is R.J. Forrester, whose promise to protect Electra Forrester becomes a symbolic gesture of loyalty in a world where allegiances are constantly shifting. R.J.'s determination reflects not only his affection for Electra, but also his growing awareness that the family he belongs to is no longer united by shared purpose. Instead, it is divided by competing visions, each one pulling at the seams of what once seemed unbreakable. His role becomes that of a reluctant mediator, someone who sees the cracks forming and tries, perhaps futilely, to hold them together. Electra herself embodies another layer of vulnerability. Her connection to RJ offers her a sense of safety, yet the shadows of other people's secrets loom dangerously close. Unbeknownst to her, Melissa Dillon is entangled in a past that refuses to remain buried, a past that now resurfaces in the form of Remy Price. His sudden reappearance is not merely coincidental, it is calculated, deliberate, and deeply unsettling. Remy carries with him the weight of unresolved history, and his presence injects a darker tone into the narrative, one defined by manipulation and coercion. Dillon's predicament is particularly harrowing because it operates on multiple levels. On the surface, she is simply a woman trying to move forward, to build something new for herself. But beneath that surface lies fear, the kind that gnaws quietly, growing stronger with every passing moment. Remy's leverage over her is not just about what he knows, it is about what he can expose. The threat of her past being revealed to Electra creates a suffocating tension, forcing Dillon into a corner where every choice carries consequences. If she complies with Remy's demands, she risks losing her integrity. If she resists, she risks losing everything else. This dynamic introduces a theme that echoes throughout the broader storyline, the cost of secrets. In a world where reputation is currency, the revelation of a hidden truth can be devastating. Dillon's struggle mirrors, in many ways, the larger conflicts within Forrester Creations, where unspoken resentments and buried grievances are beginning to surface. Each character, in their own way, is grappling with the question of how much they are willing to sacrifice to protect what they value most. Meanwhile, Liam Spencer emerges as a catalyst for change, though his intentions are far from malicious. His idea of bringing in a new designer for Hope's potential line at Logan represents both an opportunity and a risk. By suggesting Deke Sharp, Liam introduces a variable that could reshape the competitive landscape. To him, it is a strategic move, a way to empower Hope and give her a fresh start. But to others, particularly those within the Forrester sphere, it may be perceived as an act of defiance, even betrayal. Katie Logan, ever perceptive and ambitious in her own right, is quick to recognize the implications of Liam's proposal. The possibility of drawing Hope away from Forrester and into the Logan fold excites her, not just because of the professional advantage it offers, but because it represents a shift in power dynamics. For Katie, this is more than a business decision. It is a chance to redefine what the Logan name stands for in an industry dominated by the Forresters. Yet this ambition is not without its consequences. When Katie confides in Donna Logan Forrester, the conversation takes on a more somber tone. Donna, deeply connected to both sides of the family, senses the danger inherent in Katie's plan. She understands that this is not merely a corporate maneuver, but a move that could irrevocably damage familial relationships. Her concern is rooted in a painful awareness that once certain lines are crossed, there is no easy way back. Donna's fear reflects a broader anxiety that permeates the narrative, the fear of irreversible change. The Logan sisters have always been bound by a shared history, but that bond is now under strain. Katie's determination to pursue what she believes is right clashes with Donna's desire to preserve harmony, creating a subtle but significant tension between them. It is a reminder that even the strongest relationships can falter when tested by conflicting priorities. Brooke Logan Forrester, perhaps more than anyone, finds herself caught between these opposing forces. As both a mother and a business figure, she is torn between supporting Hope and maintaining stability within Forrester Creations. Her attempts to mediate between Katie and the rest of the family are driven by a genuine desire to keep everyone together, yet they often fall short. The deeper the conflict becomes, the more apparent it is that reconciliation may not be possible without significant sacrifice. Hope's conversations with Brooke reveal the depth of her frustration. Her argument that Brooke should share leadership with Ridge instead of Steffi is not just a critique of the current power structure. It is an expression of her longing for a different kind of leadership, one that values collaboration over control. This perspective highlights Hope's internal struggle. She wants to believe in the possibility of fairness, yet her experiences are pushing her toward a more confrontational stance. Carter Walton, observing these developments from a position of relative neutrality, becomes increasingly concerned. His warnings to Steffi and Ridge are not born of allegiance to any one side, but of a broader understanding of human behavior. He recognizes that pushing someone to their limit rarely ends well, and he senses that Hope is nearing that breaking point. His role as a voice of reason adds a layer of tension, as his advice is acknowledged but not always heeded. As the days progress, the situation escalates. The idea of Hope leaving Forrester transforms from a possibility into an inevitability. When she finally takes that step, aligning herself with Logan, the reaction is explosive. Steffi's anger is immediate and unfiltered, Ridge's disappointment is palpable, and Brooke's heartbreak is almost unbearable. Yet Hope remains steadfast, her resolve hardened by everything she has endured. Her declaration that she deserves to be valued carries both defiance and vulnerability, a recognition that sometimes self-preservation requires difficult choices. The aftermath of Hope's decision introduces new complications, particularly regarding her contractual obligations. The question of intellectual property becomes a battleground, with the naming of her new line, simply Hope, adding fuel to the fire. To Liam, the name is a reflection of authenticity, a way to anchor the brand in her identity. But to Steffi, it may appear as an attempt to capitalize on the legacy of Hope for the future, blurring the lines between inspiration and imitation. This dispute underscores the intricate relationship between identity and ownership in the fashion world. Names carry weight, and in this case, they also carry history. The potential for legal and ethical conflict adds another layer of drama, transforming what might have been a fresh start into yet another arena of confrontation. Parallel to these corporate battles, Dylan's storyline continues to darken. Her interactions with Remy grow increasingly tense, each encounter reinforcing the precariousness of her situation. the possibility of Elektra discovering the truth looms large, creating a constant undercurrent of anxiety. Yet within this tension lies a glimmer of hope, the chance for redemption through honesty and forgiveness. Elektra's eventual willingness to forgive Dylan marks a turning point, not just for their relationship, but for Dylan herself. It is a moment that challenges her assumptions about trust and acceptance, offering her a path forward that does not rely on secrecy. However, this newfound connection also raises the stakes, making her even more determined to keep her past with Remy hidden. The irony is striking. Just as she is given a chance to be honest, she feels compelled to lie even more. Amid all of this, Daphne Rose Walton's journey introduces a quieter but equally poignant storyline. Her visit to the doctor, driven by concerns about infertility, adds an emotional depth that contrasts with the more overt conflicts elsewhere. For Daphne and Carter, the possibility of not being able to have children forces them to confront a different kind of uncertainty, one that cannot be resolved through negotiation or strategy. Their struggle is deeply personal, yet it resonates with the broader themes of the narrative. It is about facing limitations, redefining expectations, and finding strength in vulnerability. If they are indeed confronted with difficult news, their journey toward building a family will require resilience and creativity, reminding viewers that not all battles are fought in boardrooms or through confrontations. As these various threads intertwine, the overarching narrative becomes one of transformation. Each character is pushed beyond their comfort zone, forced to make choices that reveal their true priorities. The chaos within Forrester Creations serves as both a catalyst and a mirror, reflecting the internal conflicts that each individual must navigate. By the end of these 2 weeks, nothing remains unchanged. Alliances are redefined, secrets are brought closer to the surface, and the delicate balance that once held everything together is irrevocably altered. Yet within this upheaval lies the possibility of growth. The question is not whether the characters will emerge unscathed, they will not, but whether they will learn from the fractures that have been exposed. In this way, the unfolding drama of the bold and the beautiful becomes more than just a story of rivalry and ambition. It becomes an exploration of what it means to stand one's ground, to confront the consequences of one's choices, and to seek meaning in the midst of uncertainty. Every glance, every word, every decision carries weight, contributing to a narrative that is as emotionally resonant as it is compelling. In the ever-shifting emotional landscape of the bold and the beautiful, madness rarely arrives as a sudden explosion. Instead, it creeps in quietly, disguising itself as longing, as justification, as a desperate attempt to rewrite one's own narrative. Over the coming episodes, that slow descent becomes unmistakably visible in the unraveling of Deacon Sharp, a man who, once defined by his roguish charm and opportunistic instincts, now appears to be losing his grip on reality entirely. What begins as questionable decision-making evolves into something far more dangerous, a willful denial of consequences, a refusal to confront truth, and ultimately, a reckless pursuit of love that threatens to destroy everyone in its path. Deacon's spiral cannot be understood without first acknowledging the fragile illusion he has constructed around himself. For a brief moment, it seemed as though he had found stability. His marriage to Sheila Carter, a woman infamous for her volatility, was itself a paradox, a union built not on trust, but on mutual recognition of darkness. They were, in many ways, reflections of each other. Two people who had lived on the fringes of morality, finding solace in a connection that required no pretense of innocence. Yet even within that uneasy equilibrium, there existed an inherent instability, a sense that the slightest disruption could shatter everything. That disruption came in the form of betrayal, an affair that, on the surface, might seem almost predictable given Deacon's history. But this time, the stakes were different. This was not merely a lapse in judgment or a fleeting indulgence, it was a deliberate act that exposed the cracks in his already fragile psyche. By engaging in a relationship with his own therapist, Deacon crossed a boundary that should have served as a safeguard against his worst impulses. Instead, It became yet another example of his inability, or unwillingness, to respect limits. What makes this betrayal particularly unsettling is not just the act itself, but Deacon's response to it. Rather than grappling with guilt or attempting to repair the damage, he appears to pivot almost immediately, redirecting his emotional energy toward another woman, Taylor Hayes. In doing so, he constructs a narrative in which his actions are not only justified but somehow noble. He convinces himself that what he feels for Taylor is genuine, transformative, and deserving of pursuit, regardless of the chaos left in its wake. This self-deception is the cornerstone of Deacon's unraveling. It allows him to ignore the most glaring contradiction of all, that he is still legally married to Sheila. In his mind, the emotional severing of that relationship is sufficient. The legal reality, the necessity of divorce, the implications of shared assets, the lingering ties that cannot simply be wished away, is treated as an inconvenience rather than a responsibility. It is as though he believes that by declaring his intentions loudly enough, he can reshape reality to match his desires. Yet reality, as always, resists such manipulation. The absence of Sheila is not a resolution but a void, and voids have a way of drawing attention to themselves. When Sheila learns of Deacon's betrayal, the expected reaction would be explosive, even violent. Given her history, those around her brace for the worst, anticipating a storm of vengeance that would leave devastation in its wake. Instead, something far more unsettling occurs. She disappears. This disappearance is not an act of surrender but a strategic retreat, a withdrawal into the shadows that amplifies the tension rather than diffusing it. Sheila's silence is heavy with implication. It suggests that she is not defeated but recalibrating, not broken but waiting. For those who know her, this absence is more terrifying than any immediate outburst could be. It introduces an element of unpredictability that lingers over every scene, a reminder that danger often announces itself not with noise, but with quiet. And yet, in a display of almost surreal denial, Deacon and Taylor proceed as though Sheila no longer exists. Their interactions take on an oddly youthful quality, reminiscent of infatuated teenagers who believe that love alone is enough to overcome any obstacle. They laugh, they dream, they make plans, each moment reinforcing the illusion that they are building something new and untarnished. But beneath this veneer lies a fundamental instability, a truth that neither of them can fully escape. For Taylor, the situation is particularly complex. As a psychiatrist, she is trained to recognize patterns of behavior, to understand the motivations that drive individuals towards self-destructive choices. And yet, when it comes to Deacon, she seems to suspend that analytical lens, allowing herself to be guided by emotion rather than reason. This contradiction speaks to a deeper vulnerability within her, a longing for connection, for validation, for a sense of being chosen. It is this vulnerability that places her at the center of an increasingly volatile conflict. The Forrester family, already wary of Deacon's influence, view his growing closeness with Taylor as a threat. To them, this is not a love story but a warning sign, a pattern repeating itself with potentially disastrous consequences. They understand, perhaps more clearly than Taylor herself, that Deacon's behavior is not indicative of stability but of chaos barely contained. Their concerns are not unfounded. If Deacon is indeed willing to pursue marriage with Taylor while still legally bound to Sheila, it suggests a level of detachment from reality that cannot be ignored. A proposal under such circumstances is not a gesture of commitment but a symptom of delusion, a belief that intentions alone can override legal and emotional complexities. It raises a critical question: is Deacon truly in control of his actions, or is he being driven by impulses he no longer understands? This question becomes even more pressing when considering the practical implications of a situation. Marriage is not merely a declaration of love, it is a legal contract, one that carries with it a host of responsibilities and consequences. Without a formal divorce from Sheila, any attempt to marry Taylor would be invalid, potentially exposing both of them to legal complications. Moreover, the issue of shared assets looms large, particularly in relation to Aiel Giardino. Aiel Giardino is more than just a business. It is a symbol of Deacon's attempts at legitimacy, a tangible representation of his efforts to build something stable and respectable. However, as long as he remains married to Sheila, she may have a legal claim to a portion of that enterprise. This introduces a layer of conflict that extends beyond personal relationships into the realm of financial and professional stakes. A divorce would not only be emotionally charged but also potentially contentious, with significant implications for Deacon's future. The prospect of such a divorce raises further questions about Sheila's intentions. If she chooses to re-emerge, will she seek retribution, financial gain, or something more complex? Her history suggests that she is not one to relinquish control easily, particularly when she feels wronged. The idea that she might simply fade away, allowing Deacon to move on without consequence, is almost inconceivable. More likely, her silence is a prelude to action, a calm before a storm that will test the resilience of everyone involved. For Taylor, the looming threat of Sheila's return casts a shadow over what might otherwise be a hopeful new beginning. Even if she chooses to trust Deacon, to believe in the sincerity of his feelings, she cannot ignore the reality of the situation. She is stepping into a narrative that is already fraught with tension, aligning herself with a man whose past is riddled with instability. The question is not whether challenges will arise, but how severe they will be, and whether she is prepared to face them. This tension is mirrored in the reactions of those around her. The Forster family's opposition is not merely protective but deeply rooted in their understanding of what is at stake. They have witnessed the consequences of Sheila's actions, felt the ripple effects of her decisions. To them, Taylor's involvement with Deacon is not just risky, it is potentially catastrophic. Their attempts to intervene, to caution, to persuade, are driven by a desire to prevent history from repeating itself. Yet, as is often the case in matters of the heart, logic struggles to compete with emotion. Taylor's connection to Deacon, however flawed, offers her something that she may feel is missing elsewhere, a sense of immediacy, of passion, of being truly seen. This emotional fulfillment, however fleeting or illusory, becomes a powerful motivator, one that can overshadow rational concerns. It is this internal conflict between what she knows and what she feels that defines her journey in these unfolding episodes. Meanwhile, Deacon's behavior continues to oscillate between determination and denial. His insistence on moving forward with Taylor, on building a future that disregards the unresolved elements of his past, suggests a man who is not merely reckless, but deeply disconnected from reality. Each decision he makes reinforces this impression, creating a sense that he is not fully aware of the consequences of his actions. This disconnect is perhaps the most alarming aspect of his transformation. It is one thing to make mistakes, to act impulsively or selfishly. It is another to lose the ability to recognize those mistakes as such. In Deacon's case, the line between intention and delusion becomes increasingly blurred, raising the possibility that he is no longer capable of making sound judgments. As the narrative progresses, the various threads of conflict begin to intertwine, creating a tapestry of tension that is both intricate and volatile. Sheila's absence, Deacon's instability, Taylor's vulnerability, and the Forster family's opposition all converge, each element amplifying the others. The result is a storyline that is not only dramatic but deeply unsettling as it explores the consequences of unchecked desire and unresolved trauma. At its core, this unfolding drama is a study in denial, the ways in which individuals construct narratives to shield themselves from uncomfortable truths. Deacon denies the reality of his marriage, Taylor downplays the risks of her involvement, and even those around them struggle to accept the extent of the danger. It is only a matter of time before these illusions collide with reality, forcing each character to confront the consequences of their choices. When that moment arrives, it is unlikely to be gentle. The reemergence of Sheila, the potential fallout of a contentious divorce, and the strain placed on familial relationships all point toward a climax that will test the limits of loyalty, resilience, and sanity. In such a landscape, there are no easy resolutions, only difficult decisions and the enduring impact of those decisions. Ultimately, the story unfolding in the bold and the beautiful over these episodes is not just about romance or betrayal. It is about the fragile boundary between control and chaos, the ways in which individuals navigate their own flaws, and the consequences of believing that one can outrun the past. As Deacon Sharp continues his descent, the question is no longer whether he will face repercussions, but how far-reaching those repercussions will be.